This is World in Revolution, and we're going to talk about Maduro's possible invasion of Guyana. You know, Maduro has hinted that he wants to take over part of the territory of Guyana, the country next to Venezuela. There is indeed an international dispute there, and Brazil has already deployed a number of troops to the border with Venezuela. Venezuela has also deployed a lot of troops on the Guyanese border. Are we going to have a war here in South America? I wouldn't rule it out. Let's understand the situation. What could lead to this war? Who would be on each side in this story? And above all, this is a conflict that President Lula can resolve. Let's see if he'll finally use it after so many failed attempts to make geopolitics shit. This is a conflict that he actually has the power to resolve. Let's see if he can do it. I don't think so. This news was suggested by Peter and Flavio Dino at the Maromba Mansion, Mosca Maldita, and several other people. Thanks to everyone who suggested news on our website at visolibertaria.com. Thank you for watching our video, and if you like our content, please like and subscribe to our channel. So look what's happening. I'll start by showing this other map here, which I think is more useful for understanding the situation. We're looking at the north of South America, and you've got Venezuela here, and today you've got Guyana, which is another country here. You might even want to take a look at Google Maps here. The north of South America had Venezuela, right? There's Venezuela here. Guyana was formerly called British Guyana. Suriname was formerly called Dutch Guyana. And here is French Guyana, which is still a colony of France. So this is part of France. Curiously, Brazil has a land border with the European Union here in French Guyana. Suriname, however, and Guyana have become independent countries, countries that are run internally here. But there is one big unresolved issue. Around that region called Essequibo, which is all that area to the west of the Essequibo River, which comes from down here and crosses the whole of Guyana. Look, it's more than half of Guyana's territory. This entire area is claimed by Venezuela. This dispute has actually existed for a long time, except that it had been the subject of an agreement made around the 1800s. But then nobody really cared, because the truth is that there's just a lot of forest here. Nobody cares. But now Guyana has found a lot of oil here in the sea in front of her territory, and things have changed. Venezuela decided, oh no, that agreement from I don't know when is no longer valid. We have to do it now. We have to solve this problem. And it's threatening to invade this region of Guyana. And what's wrong with that? The problem with this is a war here in South America. That's what I'm telling you. People see Russia's war with Ukraine as something far away. Ah, but it's none of our business? Are we not going to support Ukraine because we have nothing to do with it? That's right, my friend. Now we have to deal with it, because one of the reasons that is certainly in the balance for Maduro to carry out this invasion is to help Putin. Putin is in the following situation in Ukraine. He can't advance with his troops. Putin's troops are deteriorating fast. So in the end, he's going to have to find a way out. He's going to have to make peace somehow with Ukraine, because he can't hold out there for long. So how desperate is Putin? He's trying to start other conflicts in the world because he thinks the reason he can't hold Ukraine is because of Western aid to Ukraine. That's not all. This is certainly one of the factors, but that's not all. In any case, he hopes to distract the world with other wars so that the world abandons Ukraine and he can reach a peace agreement with Ukraine. And it's kind of urgent for him because it's winter now. The elections in Russia are in March 2024. So look at the whole situation. The war that was far away, that we had nothing to do with, but that I warned about from the start. It's a war for the whole world. The war between Russia and Ukraine is already a world war. It was already at the beginning. Why? If Russia wins this war, if it conquers any square centimeter of territory in Ukraine, it will be proven that everyone has to have atomic weapons, everyone has to rearm. Because at the end of the day, it's force that rules. There's no such thing as a peace agreement. Russia has signed no less than 3 agreements recognizing Ukraine's borders since Ukraine's independence, and yet it has kicked everything down the road because it has decided it wants to invade. Well, that's the situation, isn't it? And now we're getting close. Venezuela is very close to Putin. There are those who say that the only time Maduro didn't fall was when there was a revolution here in Venezuela with lots of protests and so on. He only didn't fall because Putin put a special squad here in Venezuela and held Maduro back at all costs because the Venezuelan military itself was against him. Now maybe Putin will cover this favor from Maduro. Maduro, you need to start a war there to distract the world. You see, this has the makings of a war that will fall into Brazil's lap. Because the United States sees Brazil as a regional leader, while Brazil is totally inept at solving Ukraine's problem with Russia, of Israel with Hamas and so on, and indeed the very case of Hamas and Israel certainly has a Russian hand in it too. So to solve the problem here in South America, it really makes sense for Brazil to intervene. Brazil is the largest army in South America. Although it's not great, it's still the largest army in South America, and the people here have good relations with everyone. Lula is even better qualified to stop Venezuela than anyone else. Bolsonaro wouldn't be able to talk to Venezuela. I'm not saying it's a good thing because I don't think Maduro will listen to Lula, but he's in a better geopolitical position for it, right? Now, here's what's going to happen. Is Venezuela going to take Guyana? If they invade, will they take it? I think so. If you look at Guyana's armed forces, they're ridiculous. Venezuela's is not all that. It's much less than you might think. Heavily based on Soviet equipment, old equipment. But there are 123,000 soldiers, a lot of tanks, a lot of things. Not that a tank is going to help much right now, okay? That's another problem, isn't it? If you look here at the topographical map of the region, you'll see that in fact the only way to take this area here, which would certainly be the Venezuelan strategy, would be to launch a pincer here from the north going by sea, because this region is all closed forest. Forget it. It's impossible to conduct a military campaign in a closed forest. You can't use a tank, you can only use small teams. The enemy can put a lot of traps there, a lot of challenges, then forget it. The alternative would be to come along the coast by sea, enter the Essequibo River here and take it from here. And at the same time to come here through this higher part, which is precisely the plateau there that is home to the Mount Roraima National Park, which lies within the Raposa do Sol indigenous land. In other words, the alternative would be for it to pass right next to the Brazilian border here and reach the river through here. You see, this is the Essequibo River again. So he would make this clamp, close this off, and then isolate this area here from Guyana, and that's it. He's conquered. There's nothing more to do. Of course, the Guyanese armed forces will resist. They will try to fight. They will hold out as long as they can. But the truth is that they are very unlikely to be effective at this level. The Brazilian army is already there. It's already positioned itself. It's already put a lot of armored vehicles on the border because in this region it really makes sense to use tanks. The Brazilian army placed these tanks here in Pacaraima, in this region, right? Here it's a higher region. You even have forest, you even have trees, but it's no longer a dense forest. It's no longer that closed forest. So eventually, if Venezuela really did decide to use this region here to attack, Brazil would be able to stop this kind of thing here. Of course, if it's really in Brazil's interest to intervene against Venezuela, because that's another question, which side would Brazil be on in this war? Brazil has ties with Guyana. It has a responsibility under international law to protect the integrity of other countries. But you know Lula loves Maduro. Lula sucks Maduro's cock. Lula loves Maduro. So there's a big risk. Maduro identifies Guyana as British imperialism. So in other words, here in Brazil, people also think it's English imperialism, so we have to fight it and so on. It's absurd. There is this risk. We don't know what will happen. And another thing is this. What would happen in terms of alliances? Because of course, if Venezuela invades Guyana, Guyana is part of the former countries of England, then there is the possibility of her calling on the Commonwealth, the alliance of former British countries and colonies, and asking for Britain's help. There is that possibility. If England enters here, it will be a new Falkland Islands dispute. As much as Maduro has a strong military force, he's no match for England and they'll solve the problem in no time. But again, no one has more knowledge of jungle warfare than the Brazilian army. You have to recognize that the Brazilian army in this area is one of the largest in the world. So the army is deploying here in the region. The fact that he has put himself here means that they are taking the possibility seriously. In other words, will it happen? I don't know. Maduro has called a plebiscite for December 3rd, that's now next week. Go and vote on that plebiscite. The result of the plebiscite, has very little to do with what people actually vote for. Everyone can vote, press the little buttons, whoever they want, and Maduro already knows the result. The question we don't know is what the result will be. Why? I think Maduro is going to invade Guyana. He has everything to do it. He's a shitty dictator, losing popularity in a country that is increasingly more divided than Venezuela. So all he wants is a fight with the foreigner to prove his strength and so on. Russia must have already instigated him to do this. It's stupid. He'll end up screwing himself. But Russia must have instigated him to do it. Maduro is a bit of an ass. He's going to do this kind of thing. He's going to do this invasion. He'll burn himself out completely. Not in the first moment. In the first moment, it will be able to conquer a good part of Guyana. But then what will happen? Certainly the United States will intervene, England will intervene, and then Venezuela has nothing to do. For Putin, this is already a victory, because he has distracted attention once again. If the war between Hamas and Israel is already taking the attention of people in Ukraine, there's a war in Venezuela with Guyana, and that's more. And they're already preparing Kosovo and Serbia too. In other words, everything is cooking for the creation of a major world war, which is what we imagine will happen very soon. And that's Brazil's big problem. Which side are we going to be on in this world war? The chances are that we'll be on the wrong side. Lula loves Hamas, he loves Putin, he loves the guy from Iran, he doesn't like the US, he doesn't like Europe. Bolsonaro had the mistake of aligning himself with Putin. It was an absurd mistake by Bolsonaro. I criticized him a lot for that. But the truth is that his general alignment was with Europe and the United States. It was just that one slip on his part, but not Lula. Lula is all wrong. Lula is all connected with the left, with Putin's people, the dictators, the Hamas terrorists. I hope that the Brazilian army has a sufficient degree of independence and institutionality to know that our side is with the West. We have to align ourselves with the forces of freedom. This business of staying with the axis of evil always goes wrong. Every time there's no way. Freedom always wins in the end. And if you haven't won yet, it's because you haven't got to the end of it yet. Ukraine will beat Russia. As long as Russia hasn't left Ukraine, the war isn't over yet. Anyway, it's very sad here. I hope it doesn't happen, but there's a chance it could. And if it happens, that's what it will be. Part of it will come here by sea, entering the Essequibo River. Another part will come here via Mount Roraima, or through that area next to the Brazilian border. I hope they don't make the mistake of invading Brazil for that. I hope Lula doesn't give them a license to invade Brazil for that. But the other part would come here from the south, to take advantage of this higher region, to reach the river here and complete the siege of this region. This part down here, what they call the upper Essequibo, which is just forest, doesn't really interest Maduro because what interests him is the coast. The oil sources are out front. He can afford to conquer it here later or let it go or whatever. It's completely absurd if he does that, but there's a chance he'll do it. And if he does that, the chances of Brazil being on the wrong side are very high. I hope that doesn't happen. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you like the content, don't forget to like it. This helps the channel grow and reach more people. If you don't like it, leave a dislike and explain in the comments how we can improve. You can also comment on suggestions for topics that we can bring back here. Insulting comments or those defending dictatorships and war criminals will be summarily blocked. Thank you for your understanding. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing by clicking the subscribe button below and checking the bell for all announcements. If you'd like to help the channel, you can find out how on our website.